It's been a couple of days. Things had seemed to calm down, and Lexi was sleeping in her own room again. You've asked me how she's doing, and I wish I could tell you she's absolutely fine. But that's not the case anymore. I know what I told you before seems exotic. Don't get me wrong, it still terrifies me. But for the most part, things had returned to normal for a day. I'd been getting my homework done, slept in a bit longer than I should have, and I was doing my best to try to get Lex to daycare on time. But that's where things began to take a turn, and everything has fallen apart from there. Let me fill you in. Yesterday morning, I woke up at about 8:30, made a particularly well put together batch of mac and cheese. I know what you're thinking. Mac and cheese for breakfast? Well, it's what Lexi wanted, and I didn't have time for the fit she'd throw. I had a meeting to go to, a director to speak with, and somewhere in between I had to finalize a script. So I had to rush. She ate. Things were fine. I dropped her off, and things continued to be fine. It was joyous. I went about my business, and I got most everything I needed done. There's still an issue with the script, but I had to take a break from that to pick Lexi back up. It was nearing 3:45 when I finally pulled into the parking lot of the daycare. I knew I would get a lecture about my tardiness, but I didn't really care after my week. I was running late, and there wasn't much I could do about it. Regardless, I left my car and headed to the building when I noticed one of the caretakers smoking a cigarette outside the building. Now, I can't judge. I used to smoke, but it seemed odd to me that he was out in the front doing it. He noticed me walking up and recognized me from that morning, pointing angrily with his two first fingers, the cigarette pinched in between them. I tried to avoid the conversation, telling him I knew I was late and pleading for forgiveness, but he spoke over me. "Your daughter is fucking nuts, dude." I was understandably taken aback. What place did this kid have talking to me like that in the first place? Let alone about my toddler. "Excuse me?" I distinctly remember the harshness of my tone. "She bit Margaret." That alone would have been enough for me to switch gears, but he continued. "Then she wiped Marge's blood all over her face and started ranting about some shit. I don't even think I heard it right." He looked scared, more than anything. I was at a loss, and thankfully Margaret, the lead on shift that day, came outside to greet me. She explained to me in detail the rest of the story, agreeing with what the man had already told me. Apparently this had happened only moments before I arrived. Lex did indeed bite Margaret, quite badly from what I saw, and I was told that after the attack, Lex had begun to scream about how all the staff would die and be trapped in silence if they didn't help her. They tried to ask what she meant, but if they got too close, she would try to bite them. I didn't completely believe what I was hearing, but they took me to a room they had locked her in. She had fallen asleep in a corner, was covered with blood, as were most of the walls, and much of the room was in disarray. I did a check to make sure she hadn't been hurt. Thankfully she hadn't, before offering to pay for the stitches Marge would need. She turned me down, thank God, as long as I agreed to never bring Lexi back to them. Embarrassment would have been enough for that. On the drive home, Lexi only woke once. I was on the highway with Lex safely locked in her car seat in the back, when she suddenly shot to life, looked me dead in the eyes through the mirror and spoke. "Daddy, you're going to die with me soon." Then she fell back to sleep. I nearly wrecked the car, I jumped so hard. I got her home, cleaned her off, and put her to bed. She slept the entire time, allowing me to hide away in my room for at least a couple hours. I'm not a religious man. That's just not how I was raised. But I began to think I needed help. I made a call to my brother, a more godly man than I, and asked if he knew of anything that could be done. He told me that I needed to speak to his priest and gave me a phone number to call. After a long conversation with the priest, I was told that the earliest he could come out was Friday morning, in 3 days. Of course, I agreed and was left not exactly knowing what to do in the meantime. Night had fallen, and I had finished most of my work with no incident when I went downstairs to make myself some food. Not wanting to wake my daughter to see if she needed anything, I remained as quiet as I could and waited to turn the lights on before getting downstairs. Although, when I went for the switch, on the kitchen wall, there was no reaction. The lights didn't work, and the window blinds were shut. I went to open them, more to make enough light to get my scared ass back upstairs than for anything else, still making every attempt to remain silent. The metal fins crinkled and clicked loudly as I twisted them open, allowing the soft light of the moon in through the window. I noticed out of the corner of my eye a light switch on at the top of the stairs to my right. I turned, expecting to see my child cautiously making her way down the stairs, but saw nothing and heard the clink of metal behind me. I spun in a panic, making a concerned grunt in the process. Behind me, standing on top of the kitchen island, as if to look me in the eye, was my daughter. Her eyes had reddened, and her skin had darkened as if she had been playing in a pile of black soup. She smiled, but only with her mouth, her eyes still forcing a feeling of anger. "I'm going to kill your daughter, and then you," she said, speaking with uncharacteristic dictation. I stumbled as I ran for the stairs, still making it to the top faster than I ever had before, and opened my daughter's door. She was in her bed asleep. I thought to myself that maybe I'd been psyching myself out. Slowly I approached her. She was facing away and seemingly sound asleep. I could hear her breathe, and I saw most of her face, just as clean as I left her. I stopped, still afraid to wake her, and began to move backward out the door. She shifted, and I froze. Her head cocked to the side in an instant, and she turned to look at me. Her skin changed, and the red glow formed in her eyes. I fell, trying to get out of the room. A sharp pain hit my leg, but I'd stood and began to run. I glanced down the stairs before I headed down the hall to my room, to see Lexi somehow standing at the bottom of them. But I didn't stop to inspect. At the end of the hall, my open door had cast light into the wall outside. That must have been the light that I saw switched on. I didn't leave it like that. Inside my room, I saw the large figure from the kitchen 2 days before. I sprinted past it and slammed my door shut, sitting against it. My leg was bleeding significantly from a child-sized bite mark on my calf. I held it to try to stop the flow. The large figure had followed me inside, appearing only as a shadow as it paced the room. Lexi screamed bloody murder for about 2 hours after that, and as I write this, the shadow is still with me, pacing around the walls of my room. I called the priest again a few times, but I can't get through. I can't think of what else to do. I called my brother, and he told me to grab Lex and leave. But I'm honestly too afraid to open my door. I'm going to try the priest again.